Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to our unnamed fitness podcast. We got Carl down there. What's up,
Good.
Carl? And we got Robbie over there. Which way? There. Hopefully it keeps the same thing on YouTube. I'm pointing if you're listening on podcast. Yeah, so as a reminder, this is a podcast we have just, it's very informal. It's for our members to answer questions that they have. So if you have any questions you'd like to see answered or talked about, feel free to submit them to Brandon at CrossFitSouthBend.com and we'll throw it into the queue. But outside of that, today we've got supplements. The specific question of like, hey, what are good supplements to have? What are good vitamins and minerals to have? And we don't have to jump into that quite yet. I kind of wanted to talk about this Lucky Charms and steak thing for a minute. For those of you maybe not on the internet a lot, Lucky Charms and steak, it's this, people were putting it out there as if it was like the FDA, like the Food and Drug Administration, the food pyramid, like they put this out here. Lucky Charms are healthier than steak, and that's not the truth. Robbie, you want to throw your 2 cents in on that?
Yeah, Lucky Charms better than steak.
Yeah, Lucky Charms are healthier than steak. Done.
Yeah, done.
Yeah, there you go. Done.
Yeah, no, send it to the internet. No, so basically what happened with that, yeah, and you can look up articles online if people are interested. I think it highlights a few really important things for people at home just to like keep in mind. Is one, like, always keep critical thinking in mind, like in the sense of, let's say a study were to come out actually saying that, like, even if you're not familiar with its particular methodology, just like asking yourself, like, does that make sense? Like, just, you know what I mean? Just kind of like questioning, like, does that make sense? So that's important. It also highlights the quickness with which things circle the internet without, much foundation, and, people getting incensed about it and things like that. So just always remembering that, like, lies and rumors can spread like wildfire, whereas the truth is kind of harder to come by. But what happened was there was a methodology developed by a research team at Tufts University about how to rank different foods in terms of like their healthfulness, green, yellow, red, that type of thing. And actually, even the person who ended up criticizing it, from which the story came from, said that most of the time the methodology got it right, but they used the Tufts methodology to rank a series of foods. And in this one particular ranking, they were trying to highlight this important exception to things where basically Lucky Charms was ranked higher than steak. So it wasn't the government saying Lucky Charms is healthier than steak. It was a researcher pointing out a potential exception or flaw in a methodology of ranking the healthfulness of different foods, saying, hey, overall this methodology can be helpful, but you've got a problem if the methodology is saying that Lucky Charms is a green light food and ground beef. It was ground beef. Ground beef is a red light food.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some initial thoughts there.
Yeah, Robbie, but it's confirming my bias. Like, Lucky Charms, love them. So boom, done. Don't read the where the data came from. Fuck that. Doesn't matter. We don't need to read that noise. Share it, spread it.
Yeah, spread it to the internet.
Yeah, critical thinking.
I'm guessing someone who thinks Lucky Charms is healthier than ground beef probably doesn't need too much confirmation of their
own.
beyond their gut feeling to begin with.
Gosh, how you see that a lot if you're ever on Facebook. Just give your little Facebook a scroll, and if you have some older family members on there, watch some of the stuff that they share, and then consider whether they've actually read what those articles are and what it says in there, and are they actually critically thinking about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's
by
like,
the way,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
viewers, Carl's left and he is now entering the room again, so
Oh,
yeah, continue on.
no, I was just going to say, like, a really important principle for everyone to, I think, just in life, but I certainly think in health, fitness, and nutrition as well. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Is it logically possible that Lucky Charms could be healthier than ground beef? Yeah, there's no conceptual contradiction. It's not like saying 2 + 2 = 5 or make a round square. But boy, you better have some really good evidence to back that up. So when you see things that seem astounding on the internet, making a claim about this, that, or the other thing, just try to keep your thinking cap on, try to keep that critical thinking going. The other thing that's really important that relates to what we're talking about today, you get into a lot more trouble when you try to rank the healthfulness of foods, I think, when you deviate from micronutrients. Micronutrients meaning certain things we need in gram or smaller amounts to be healthy. So like vitamins, minerals, omega-3s, phytonutrients. Part of the reason this Tufts report was able to generate the Lucky Charms is better than ground beef is by starting to rank macronutrients, things we need in gram or larger amounts, by saying, oh, well, we want a better carbohydrate to fiber ratio, and saturated fat, not good. And so you start to get a little, you start to inject a bit more bias in there. Now, there are lots of different ways that can go wrong, but I think that's important because you do get a lot more objective data with things like ground beef does objectively have more vitamins and minerals than a boneless, skinless chicken breast. That's just a matter of fact. That's not an opinion. It's not a belief. It's not a guess. That's just a matter of fact. Now, when we get into weighing, well, is saturated fat good or bad? Well, now we're getting into dietary philosophies. But the micronutrient thing is just an objective matter of fact. There's no debate about whether steak or ground beef have more vitamins or minerals than chicken breast. They just do.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing, I think, for people to keep in mind that relates to what we're going to talk about with supplements with vitamins and minerals. So
yeah, that's really hard. The ranking system, I looked at it on the food compass a little bit, and just an oversimplification of food and not taking into account the person that is eating said food and how their body's going to react to saturated fats, and how much or how little. And I feel like we could do better. It just might be more complicated than the people want, maybe.
Yeah, there's they're being nuanced to things, and they're not being like one specific answer for everyone and things like that. But yeah, when you the reason why it gets hairy when you start to introduce macronutrients into the ranking is because then you get into the high carb low fat wars and the low carb high fat wars, and like you get this one dietary ranking that ranks macronutrients is going to say, well, if carbs are good, well, then they're going to be better than the ones with high fat. And then the other one, the keto and carnivore, is going to say the opposite. That's why I think, to a certain extent, sticking with those micronutrients, those vitamins and minerals, tends to give you a better overall sense of like how healthy or not a food is. So
yeah. Do you think Lucky the Leprechaun sliding Tufts University some money for that? Do you think that maybe they got a little kickback from that?
Yeah, send with a few pots of gold.
Yeah, gold. Got that leprechaun money. Well, let's talk about these supplements. Robbie, what's a supplement?
Well, it's something that for pretty much all of human history, I guess, unless you count, certain maybe herbs and spices that different tribes might have used, that supplements as we define them today are things that come in little bottles, plastic bottles, and they're pills, and they're typically isolated nutrients and herbs and spices. So they're things that for all of human history essentially did not exist, at least in the form in which we use them today. Again, like, I'm making an exception for, like, obviously indigenous cultures had certain turmeric and other things like that that they would use for medicinal purposes, but
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about little pill bottles. And as cliche as it sounds, but you and I and Carl, we've all said it, like supplements are exactly that. They're meant to be an addition or a supplement to a foundation of real whole food. And there are kind of three main purposes that you might think of for them, and then many others within each of these umbrella ones. There's disease, trying to manage sickness and symptoms. There's the optimization of health, and then there's performance, kind of along that continuum. So if like death is over here and like optimum performance is over here, not necessarily optimum health, as we're all aware. Like optimum health does not necessarily mean optimum performance, but if we think about like someone being able to run an ultra marathon or lift as much weight as they can, like that's where supplements can potentially augment natural human biology.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Carl?
No, I mean that's a good barrier to start with, right? Like I said, it's the definition is in the word supplement. It's part of that. So like referring back to some of like our other talks, things like that, the whole food, real food, is where you're going to get a lot of those vitamins and minerals and things like that. And if you can't out workout or out train a bad diet, you can't out supplement a shitty diet, right? So it's a piece, and it's a small piece, right? Unless you're getting things like against like sickness, right? That made us a bigger piece of the puzzle. But for others, it's more towards the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, towards the top of the pyramid. That's to say that it's probably one of the last things you should be thinking about after you've checked off all of the low-hanging fruit or the basics. So actually, it would seem from an ease standpoint that supplements are the low-hanging fruit, right? Because I just go on Amazon and I buy it, and then it comes to me and I'm done, right? I don't have to learn how to cook food. I don't have to, if somebody's out there and they're listening and like, I hate the taste of water, like we don't have to deal with what is all contained within that, right? If you have issues with sleep, like all of that is I think we use this phrase quite a bit, stepping over $100 bills to pick up nickels. But yeah, that's exactly what you're doing when you're going and buying creatine rather than eating 3 regular meals a day with enough protein and all that jazz. Yeah,
it requires no habitual changes outside of just scheduling it in your day and remembering to take whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me of something. I mean, he didn't intend it as funny, but I think it's kind of funny. So Alex Hormozy, he had a YouTube video about his, like when he was trying to save money as a young kid, his Mosey meals. So he would basically, he would go to Chick-fil-A or Chipotle or whatever, or have like PB&Js and milk, and then he said, okay, well, I'll just get a multi and a fish oil.
Yeah.
Now, again, but I do think this brings up an important point with relation to what we were saying. Like, if we're talking about like, hey, you got to save a bunch of money and you got to do what you got to do. Well, okay, that's clearly the intent that he's talking about. But if someone thinks, hey, you can eat PB&Js and drink milk all day, every day, and just take a multi, and that,
yeah.
let me know how your inflammation, recovery, and sleep and blood sugar and all that other stuff goes. Like that highlights an important thing, which is that, well, a number of important things. It doesn't account for the fact that like those foods are inflammatory and they deplete nutrients and they spike blood sugar and they're addictive and blah 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 blah. But one thing that often gets overlooked with supplements is that your body understands the language of food. Biologically, we are wired to absorb nutrients from food. And there are all sorts of, when you think about it, it's really profound when you think about it. Like, we didn't know about any vitamins and minerals, like the specific ones like A, B, C, all that stuff, until like relatively recently, like the past couple hundred years. So there are all these cofactors in foods that help with absorption of, say omega-3 fatty acids from a piece of salmon and then you're getting iodine and selenium and other things in it rather than just the omega-3 pill. So it's really important to, recognize that like the foundation of all this stuff should be built upon real whole food on a regular basis, and only then should you consider supplementation.
Yeah, something you mentioned, fitness and nutrition science is relatively new, especially when you're talking over the past 100 to maybe 200 years as well. So not a ton of data, and most of it's argued about.
Yeah, and I mean, different cultures, take something like cod liver oil or organ meats. Different cultures understood the subjective, and like they understood the power of these things through experience. You could see like, people got stronger, they got healthier, they could, get pregnant more easily or what have you. Of course, they didn't know that liver was like high in vitamin A or copper, any of those things. So like there's been that sort of folk or experiential knowledge for a long time, but like the actual vitamins and minerals themselves that we're now able to isolate and put in supplement form, we didn't know about until relatively recently in human history.
Yeah, the Frankenstein. I'm just imagining your peanut butter and jelly with a bunch of jammed pills into it. might give one of those a go later.
Yeah, get you some Mosey meals.
Yeah. Is there a meal service for that?
Maybe. I'm sure he's probably
is
creating one as we speak.
It's just a half, like a real fucked up looking PBJ with a bunch of pills in it.
Yeah. Anything the body needs.
We get into like regulation of supplements as well too, and there's a little bit of like how they say they're regulated and how they actually are regulated, and how much mystery there is around like what is inside, what can they get away with. And I think the answer there is quite a bit. They can get away with quite a bit, whereas drugs have to prove they are safe. Supplements, they have to, the FDA has to prove that the supplement is not safe, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which is
the burden of proof is in the other direction. And that allows for more freedom in terms of what is allowed to be sold. And there are arguments on both sides about, this is the same thing in the fitness industry, right? About like who should be able to coach fitness and what should be the regulations, and should the burden of proof be one way or the other. But yeah, with supplements, it's currently, for the most part, until stuff has hit the fan, they can sell it. And even if stuff doesn't hit the fan, like if you go on their websites, like I'm forgetting the name of the second one, but the first one would be examine.com. The ones where they'll do breakdowns of like, oh, this one is really high in cadmium or really high in this heavy metal, and this one says it's 100% omega-3 fish oil and it's 50% omega-3 fish, you know what I mean, like that type of thing. So they're not very well regulated, and like getting quality stuff does make a difference.
I'm thinking like cases too of, at least on the supplement side of things, more like I'm thinking like pre-workouts or things like that, like Jack 3D back in the day, this and that. Like the people always talk about like how like the original formula was like the good stuff, and then once they got the market share, then they started cutting it and putting in fillers, right? And then the potency or the effectiveness was not the same. So they have the ability to do that within like their proprietary blends and things like that they list as like their secret ingredients.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think you want to see some misleading, very vague labels. Look at pre-workout. That's probably one of the nastiest, sketchiest places to go for things. Look at all that. That's, you've got all the money is marketing, and then just whatever's going to get people hyped up inside it. Yeah.
And I feel like that's, again, of course, all of us can think of context, but I feel like pre-workout is like the perfect example of the overwhelming majority of human beings do not need to be taking this. Like your money would be better spent elsewhere.
Ooh, man. There's people right now sipping on a Bang drink, crushing NO Explode, just losing their shit because they just crushed an entire Bang drink. That's why.
Saving money get some coffee or fix some
Yeah.
other shit.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the ordering of my questions here. Maybe how do I find out what supplements I should be taking? What's one way to find out how I could?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I do think for the overwhelming majority of people, just like we're gonna sound like broken records, but like as we've said on lots of other different videos or podcasts, like get your food habits in line, get your sleep in line, get your food quality in line. Like if just to take an example question, like if out of 20 meals a week, you're having anything less than 15 real whole food meals, like it's a waste of your effort dollars to be talking about supplements, in my opinion. Obviously there can be some that are like bridges, like, okay, well, I had a McMuffin for breakfast and now I'm getting a whey protein shake. Okay. That's a bridge and you understand that, that's fine. But do you need it for health? No, you don't. So, the first answer to the question is really going to only be appropriate to the extent you even have that foundation in place. It's like someone in CrossFit or something like that asking like, how do I get a muscle up or a body weight snatch? And they don't know how to either back squat or they can't do a pull up. You know what I mean? So that type of thing. But assuming you're at that point, there are two different, I'd say, classes of methods you can use, each with their own pros and cons. One is you can do the one pill for one ill approach, which is like, oh, I have low energy, let me go get some B vitamins. Oh, I've got inflammation, let me go get some omega-3s. Like, where you think this is the thing that's causing your thing and you don't really know. And it has the pro that it's cheap because you don't have to pay for a test to do it, but it's kind of the equivalent of like putting on a blindfold, spinning around and trying to hit a dartboard. Like you just name any symptom you want: fatigue, digestive upset, skin issues, what have you. There can be 10 different causes. So like let's take fatigue, for example. It could be low cortisol, it could be blood sugar dysregulation, it could be a gut pathogen, mitochondrial dysfunction, environmental toxins, blah 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 blah. But the point there being that like it's not as simple as like, oh, I'm going to take this one thing for my fatigue. You can try it, see if it works, see if it helps, but just recognize that A, you may not be getting to the root cause of the issue, and B, supplement wise, you don't want to have to necessarily be taking most supplements for the rest of your life. So that's one route. Route number two is you can do deeper functional health testing. We do that here, where you can get a series of tests about hormone levels, gut levels, blood sugar balance, all those different things to see like what is actually causing the issues that you're having. If someone, take another example, someone has constipation, so that they, they're slamming fiber bombs, so to speak, with their constipation. Well, you can keep doing that till the cows come home. But if you have, let's say small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or slow thyroid, or, those are the underlying things that are probably causing the issue in the first place. And just, taking fiber, it gets the job done, so to speak, to make it so you don't have to deal with those symptoms, but it's not fixing the underlying issue. So the pros of the test approach are that it actually zeroes in on what's actually going on that's causing your symptoms. The cons, of course, is that it costs more money. The pros of the symptom control approach is you can just run over to GNC or Vitamin Shop and play Twister with whatever supplement you want to take and see if it works. The cons are that you really don't know what's doing what.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, you said it costs more money, but I think we all disagree. It costs more money in the short term. In the long term, it may cost you more money not finding a coach that you could talk to about the things that you should probably be doing before you worry about treating the symptom. not the source of the problem, right? So you're looking at the smoke and you need to be focusing on the fire, right? So getting a coach who can look at you as a human first and say, oh, yeah, you're sleeping 4 hours a night, you're not eating breakfast, you're trying to do intermittent fasting and keto, and you're trying to work out 5 days a week and you're doing HIIT workouts, right? Like there's all of these red flags from a lifestyle perspective that come into play before even worrying about this symptom and these other things. And very often going after all of those things with lifestyle and just good food hygiene and food practices, your stuff gets fixed, right? And then you get to the point where, okay, well, this is long term now. This person knows what to do and how to do it. And then let's say you still have that symptom. Now you can go down that path. That fixes them. It's like you said, it's more money in the short term, but then you don't need any of it later on down the line. So
yeah, no, completely agreed. And I mean, you reposted something earlier today. It was something to the effect of like good habits cost more now, bad habits cost more later. It's that type of idea. Or there's saying the prevention is cheap, waiting is costly. It's that type of thing. So yeah, it does cost more upfront to get a test done, but if you compare it to spending the next 40 years of your life taking a random supplement that you think is fixing whatever symptom that you're dealing with on a regular basis, it's way cheaper.
Yeah, it was the thing James says. Unfortunately, bad habits take a lifetime to unfold, right? Like sometimes it'll take an entire lifetime, and then you get to 50, 60, and now you've got some shit you've got to deal with that's really hard to undo.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, I would say like question wise, who and what are like, what are they good for? What are they not good for with supplements? What are the pros of supplements?
Yeah, I think in that initial model I set up earlier of like disease, potentially optimal health and longevity and performance, like you can see pros in each of those. So like certainly in the disease, functional medicine, relieving symptoms, managing sickness that falls short of acute medicine, there's all sorts of stuff that has way less of a side effect profile than prescription drugs, let's say. That doesn't, and unlike prescription drugs doesn't block function in the body that you can get from certain targeted nutrients for, blood sugar balance or cholesterol and heart health or brain health or, ADHD or digestive supplements. So it can be very helpful in that regard, especially now that we have the technology to like test for like what things are up. Now you can really be like, oh, well, specifically, you lack, this B vitamin or choline, or, you're low in this particular type of gut flora. There can be a way to help with that. For optimal health and longevity, and this will kind of relate to the what supplements should most people be taking question. As we were discussing it the other day, Carl mentioned, and it's spot on, our soils are a lot more depleted than they were 100 years ago of certain micronutrients, specifically, vitamins and minerals. So take something like magnesium. Most of us drink city water or tap water, and that's filtered, so we're not getting quite as much in the way of minerals. So for optimal health and longevity, something like magnesium that's harder to get from food these days, even if you're eating a real whole food diet, can be beneficial. And then on the performance side, something like creatine. Creatine is about as well researched a supplement as you can possibly get. Is it necessary for health and longevity? Absolutely not. If you want to, slightly up level your gains with a Z, after having a good foundation of training practices and sleep and nutrition, yeah, it's not really harmful and it can be beneficial. Or a whey protein shake, if you're having a hard time getting enough from real whole food. So as I say that, I think about things like supplements are really good for targeting, like targeting specific issues. They can often be cheaper in some cases than real whole food for a specific thing. And yeah, those are the main ones that kind of come to mind.
Yeah, and I remember creatine being, gosh, it was definitely during my teen years where you were on creatine. People thought you were on drugs. Your parents thought you were like taking steroids or drugs, and it's yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of original native connotations around it with like the whole like, oh, it's gonna like destroy your kidneys or things like that because what was it like some I don't know, some Iowa football team or something like that, but like it wasn't the problem. But like that same thing like Lucky Charms in the beginning, like it perpetuated, right? And took this big umbrella to make to kind of get past that. So that yeah, there was the like they said, you're taking like a steroid, but then there's also the negative connotation of what it would, I guess, do to you. But like, it's naturally occurring and found in like what red meat's, right, Robbie? It's just an isolated form of that. So relatively innocuous supplementation for most.
Right.
Also, unfortunately, a lot of the creatine will do this to you kind of stuff is usually a teenager. I mean, you can kill yourself taking a whole bottle of multivitamins. So, I mean, like people sit there and slam. If some is good, then more is better. You know, slam a ton of creatine, and then get some issues with that.
Yeah, I see these articles from time to time that's like, here's what happens to this person's brain when they ate, 25 boxes of Sour Patch Kids. You know what I mean? Like people, some is good, more is not better. Like sometimes people will take that stuff and especially with supplements. It's like, well, the dose is like 2 pills, but I'm big and strong, so I could take 8 to 10. It's like, no.
Yeah. The Tide Pod era. Oh.
Yeah, right.
I just want to officially say that Tide Pods are not a supplement. They are not endorsed by CrossFit South Bend.
Please don't sue us if you
please don't. Yeah. Are there any supplements that are just like good general practice to take?
There can be. I mean, whenever I say these things, I always think of like the objections. Like I would feel like, people might lodge like the internet being like, no, wrong. For any one of these things, like you have to understand there might be like, I can give you deeper functional immunology reasons why certain people wouldn't do well with vitamin D supplementation, or how omega-3 supplementation can potentially be neuroinflammatory if someone has a particular genetic propensity. Or so that all being said, like without knowing the deeper things, there are general ones that I think can be that can be potentially beneficial, although for certain ones it's again, always talk with your doctor, make sure everything's okay in terms of whatever health conditions you have going on. But for example, something like vitamin D, even in in northern Indiana in the winter, like the angle of incidence of the sun is like, even if you were out at noon and like out naked, just
nude.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to get like the right as they call it, the angle of incidence. Like it's basically the angle at which the sunlight hits you where it can be converted into vitamin D. It's pretty hard. So something like vitamin D, like we were saying, magnesium, that's another one where it's hard to get from insufficient quantities from food. So that can be another one that's really helpful. Most people, especially in the Midwest, aren't eating a ton of fish and seafood. So omega-3s, now that was a big one back when we started this all, and people were doing like mega doses of the stuff. No, you don't need mega doses of the stuff, but stuff like that. And then you know, there are some multis that are better than others. A lot of off the store shelf stuff has too much of stuff you don't need and not enough of stuff you do need, but there are better and worse multis out there. And then for working out, again, do you need them? No, but things like whey and creatine, you know,
Yeah.
for performance can, if you want and if you have the other stuff in line, it can be okay.
Yeah. Also, you hear that, internet trolls. Robbie just made suggestions, and now I want you to attack it. No, wrong, wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but I do want to mirror what you said. It's really hard sometimes not to answer a question with "it depends." But the people want an answer, you know. So, but I think we're always down for conversation about any of that stuff. Probably not with internet trolls. If you're posting from an anonymous account and you have no posts and you start shit posting all over our stuff, we probably just won't say anything about it. But you want to have a real conversation with a human being, feel free to hop on. By the way, side note, sunny days in Indiana. Just had a conversation with somebody from Minnesota the other day, and they said, well, I think Minnesota has less, which prompted me to Google. Minnesota has 196 days, total days with sun in the year, and South Bend, Indiana has 173 total days with sun, 73 sunny days, and 100 partly sunny days out of the year, out of 365 days. So just as a quick aside, this is around this time is the time where I feel like we get a lot of clients that are just like, I'm done with this shit. I'm done. I'm moving. I can't tell you how many times, you know, like February, March rolls around. People are like, I'm moving somewhere else. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. Speaking of which, on the sunlight stuff, I mean, a safer way to get something like vitamin D, where you can actually run into issues with like supplementation dosing and like being too much or too little, and one that's a bit more self-regulating. There's a company called Sperti, SPERTI. We don't get any kickbacks from them. They're just a good company. They're the only, or one of the only FDA approved, like you do it 5 minutes 3 times a week.
Yep.
It's a vitamin D lamp, and that just helps you produce vitamin D in the winter naturally, relative to taking the supplement.
I got one of those after seeing some or having conversations with you about light, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we've kind of alluded to some of the stuff on safety considerations. Anything else you want to add to that?
I would just say, I mean, again, not to say that there aren't any other reputable supplement brands out there. Just, you know, if you go to Examine or other things like that, you just have to be careful, especially, you know, where most people get their supplements now, Amazon.com. It actually, I mean, for people in the general population, it used to be that like some of the better companies that did functional medicine supplements, it was harder to get because you need to get them through a practitioner, but now you can actually get some pretty good brands through Amazon. So some of my favorites are Designs for Health, Pure Encapsulations, Quicksilver Scientific, Integrated Therapeutics. Can I vouch for all their products? No. Are they generally speaking going to be of a higher quality and a better thing than you know, just some random thing? Chances are probably, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. I had like places to get them, you know, good reputable places to get them. I think you mentioned quite a few there. And then the secondary question is places to examine them. And I think examine.com. Is it examine.com?
Yeah, I think it's examine.com. And then there's one other that that my brother had mentioned to me at one point that I'm forgetting the name of at the moment. But yeah, there are these outfits that basically do independent research on all these different supplements and give you feedback about, like, you know, they'll review like 20 different fish oils or creatines, and they'll give you feedback on like cost per unit, highest quality, fewest heavy metals, all these different things, and they give you really good detailed feedback on things.
Yeah. I can't remember the other site too. It's like right there on the tip of my tongue, but I'm sure we'll remember it later. Yeah. Okay. I kind of want to bust some myths. Maybe we can just hit up yes, no on these. I'm just going to say something, Robbie, and you can say yes, no. You can elaborate. Number one, most people need supplements.
Trying not to say it depends.
You know what? It's okay. You can say it depends. Maybe that's our maybe. I think that's fine. You can add a little context to it.
If by supplements we mean the overwhelming majority of stuff that you would see when you walk into a vitamin shop or a GNC, yes, most people do not need supplements. If we mean, that very small cohort of things that I mentioned earlier, to, like a vitamin D or magnesium or fish oil, to replace things that you may not be getting from enough fish and seafood, or magnesium in the diet, or vitamin D sunlight, that would be a different thing. But for the vast majority of people, yes, you do not need supplements to be healthy. And again, think about it just biologically in terms of human history. Like, for all of human history, people were, for the overwhelming part of it, like, healthy and lived, without the diseases of Western civilization, without supplementation. Now, does that mean the supplements that exist today can't be useful for, like, if someone's diabetic or, has an autoimmune disease? Of course that can be useful, but for the vast majority of people, no, just focusing on real whole food.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this earlier, but can taking a multi make up for a really bad diet?
Not really, no. Like, that's the thing that people forget, is that, like, a really bad diet contains a lot of inflammatory compounds, which ups the cost of how many vitamins and minerals you need to, like, use to stave that off. They have nutrient robbers and all sorts of things that make it harder to absorb. So the short answer is no.
Okay. All right. Supplements are approved by the government.
Yes, in the way that all the chemicals that have been introduced into our environment since 1990 are approved by the government, in the sense that, like, until stuff hits the fan, it gets to kind of be the wild, wild west.
That's a really good way of putting it. It is the Wild West. Yeah.
And that's actually why today we're going to be introducing our own CrossFit supplement and our supplements.
You've heard of
proprietary.
Yeah, Liver King. We're now Robbie's the kidney queen. We're gonna go a different direction with it. Yeah.
They're all grass fed. We took some of Brandon's DNA.
You don't want to take that. Yeah. Supplement labels are accurate.
No, actually, yeah, that's why Examine and others exist, because they can say stuff, and then when they actually examine them, like, it may either A, not contain the compound that you bought, or B, contain a lot of other not good compounds that you didn't want.
Yeah. Another one, supplements do what they claim. These are some fun, tricky ones here.
Yeah. Totally depends on the supplement.
Depends. And the quality of it. You'll notice typically Quicksilver, some of the more reputable ones have less flashy marketing on it. You don't see Quicksilver multivitamins calling their stuff like Thunder Blast, sweet fruit berry punch grenade. Like, it's not anything like that, with proprietary blends in the back of it. It's pretty transparent. Yeah.
which is why we're doing a cookies and cream supplement line.
Yeah,
People can get
cookies
that.
and cream multivitamin. Yeah. Oh yeah. Gosh, I think that's the rest of it. I mean, the more of the myths. If any guys have any myths out there, feel free to post them. And but like it's like more is better. Like they almost answer themselves if you read them back to yourself a few times. Yeah. Um. Gosh. Yeah. I guess a few different ones. Yeah, we talked about creatine. We talked a little bit about protein powder, multis, berries and greens, things like that. Did you touch on berries and greens at all? I know that's a popular one right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that I'm a little bit familiar with. I mean, I've seen athletic greens before. I've
Yeah,
seen berry greens. Yeah, you can. I mean, gosh, it just all depends. The healthiest route is going to be it's a similar thing with like I think of it very much like a whey protein, right? In the sense of
hmm
like I would say to someone, if someone needs, I don't know, 150 grams of protein a day, I would want to see at least 100 of that coming from real whole food, maybe even
yeah,
ideally manage at 150. But if you can't, well, then 25 to 50 from the whey protein shake and no more than that.
yeah,
Ideally, and with the athletic greens, yeah, would it be better to just, saute up some chard or kale or spinach?
yeah,
Um, from a real whole food perspective, generally. But, if someone feels like they're deficient or they just can't really stand greens, or I mean, another one is, yes, fish oil, or people just can't stand fish and seafood. Okay, so what do you do? Well,
yeah,
that type of thing is how I think of a berries and green or an athletic greens. That's
yeah.
how I.
Yeah, and if you're saying, I don't like fish, can't stand any of this stuff, if you're saying no to that, then you're saying yes to the most likely less beneficial supplement relative to like sitting down and eating, some clean fish or otherwise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that, I mean, that brings up I always tell people with fish and seafood, right? Like it's not just omega-3s, like that food reductionism, right? Like wheat is fiber
yeah,
and dairy is calcium and fish and
yep,
seafood is omega-3s. Like fish and seafood, contain certain minerals like iodine and selenium that are super important for thyroid function that like it's really hard to get elsewhere. So you're not getting iodine and selenium um when you're taking a fish oil capsule. But again, like you said, if you're not going to try the fish and seafood or you just can't stand it, some people are allergic, so that's a real thing. But like, well then, but if you just don't like it or are not willing to try it, well then yeah, you're going to the fish oil side of things.
yeah, yeah. That's a really interesting. The food reductionism. Banana equals carb. Well, I mean, it's so much more than that. Um, and my son actually went up to the principal and was like, "Hey, like you just give us milk. Like there's no like we can't get like water or other. Well, milk has vitamin D. This is how you get your vitamin D. This is the only way." I'm like, "Well, there's vegetables with vitamin D." And obviously, like, are you going to get? Then you get into like, well, who's funding school foods, and are kids going to be? Are you just wasting a ton of vegetables, like putting them in front of kids who aren't going to eat them because of their palate? And like, what a tricky and interesting thing kids' lunches are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that one's a tricky one. Maybe we should do another podcast on like feeding your kids. That would be interesting, and also uh, I'm sure people have a lot of opinions on that one. Yeah. Um,
Definitely.
yeah. Gosh, I had another thing that I was going to say, but I forgot it in just a moment. But yeah, any other things you want to mention about supplements?
Um, I guess maybe, yeah, a couple others. So one I was just thinking of that's important. When you were saying the banana thing, it made me think of, banana potassium. People say banana
Mm,
carbs, stuff like that. Um, so there are a bunch of different electrolytes, things that help you, utilize the water that you drink, but probably the two most important are sodium and potassium.
mhm.
I often tell people like the more real whole food you eat, the less natural salt you're getting. So it's important to, I wouldn't call this a supplement. It's something we should be eating naturally, but to be able to like salt your food, like the element that we sell here, that's a way for someone to get, it's fancy salt. That's what it is. It's salt.
Yeah, fancy salt.
It's salt with a flavoring to it, but I mean, it's a very important electrolyte. So that's one that, as you eat more real whole food, it's important to, season your food to taste. The other one is potassium. It's literally because of issues it can cause medically. You can't actually, like, if you wanted to, a typical human, depending on who you ask, needs something like 4 to 6 grams a day of potassium, and you can't buy potassium as a supplement in large quantities, because again, it could cause things medically. So you need to get that from food, so things like potatoes or avocados or bananas or things like that. So it's important to remember that for lots of the nutrients that we're really talking about, lots of the vitamins and minerals that you need for your body to function, like a lot of them you need to get from food in sufficient quantities. And it's only those kind of like tail end ones that you might need to, like a magnesium or something like that, where you might need to supplement with things. So.
Yeah. You mentioned Element and the fact that we sell it too, and I think it's important to note, like, our perspective as a gym is exactly kind of what you're saying there, is that, and this is not an invite, by the way, for Advocare or anyone selling any stupid supplements to call us up and have a meeting. We're not interested in selling your supplements. I think those are the only ones we do sell, right? Element and protein powder, and that's it. And we even create context around that thing, like, hey, here's who it could be good for, here's who it's not. It's not like we're always trying to like position ourselves to sell supplements. And as a matter of fact, like, yeah, I'm opposed to the whole thing, regardless of how much money. And that's usually the position that anyone who comes in and they sit down and they're like, well, here's how much money this could make you. And oh man, I'm just not on board with that conversation. Ethically.
No,
Yeah.
completely agreed. And as you said the other day, we could be Scrooge McDuckin if we Duck McScroogin if we compromised our ethics to sell a bit more supplements. And I mean, the stuff we sell is like, it is legitimately like a better option, and it is very much in that athletic greens and the whey protein thing. Like, is Element better for you than Gatorade? Absolutely. Yeah. Like, Gatorade is just this gigantic sugar bolus that's not much different than a Pepsi. And an Element is like minerals that you put in your water that you would need to get otherwise. So do you need Element? No, you can salt your food and you'll be just fine. But like, people like the flavor, and some people don't like salt as much on their food. So like, in that, I mean, we do research on the things that we incorporate, and like you said, it's not that many, but like, yeah, there are things that are objectively better. If someone's asking me, where do I get my electrolytes, and they're like, should I do a Gatorade or an Element? Yeah, it's not even a question. Of course, Element.
Yeah, unfortunately, and in marketing, that's what they would like for you to think as well, right? Gatorade, vitamin water. Shoot, that's a good example of that. Vitamin water.
Yeah.
I haven't seen what's in that lately, but it's typically like, oh man, the marketing is beautiful on it. Can't see what the back looks like on it. Label info. Sugars, 26 sugars.
You need those to probably absorb your B's.
Yeah, added sugars. Now on the front, it's beautiful acai, blueberry, but it's all a trick. It's all a trick. Yeah. Yeah, we've forged our ethics over time, both in training and our beliefs in like training for longevity. And we would probably be a lot busier if we just set those beliefs to the side and just like, you know what, give the people what they want. Not don't think about what is going to affect clients 10 years down the road. Robbie, Carl, Brandon, like don't think about that. Just what they want now. No, I don't think I'm cool with that. And same thing with supplements and food and all of that as well.
Yeah,
I remember what I
absolutely.
was gonna.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I remember what I was gonna say earlier. Yeah, just about when we were talking about context around the protein powder, context around greens and berries and things like that. And like that's where getting a coach can be helpful if you are competing, where that stuff sits. And if you travel, if Robbie's going to go travel and he's gone for 2 days and his food is going to be scarce, we're like, hey, pack these berries and greens, pack this protein powder, get this. Here's some like really convenient ways where you can stay kind of on track with the things that you're doing without having to go to Burger King in the airport, without having to do this stuff, right? It's just like where the human and the coach and guiding clients to slightly better choices can be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, just like you said, the coach can be really helpful in a context. Like I had a discussion with a client the other day about like oatmeal. It's like, okay, well, if instant oats in the morning is keeping you from again doing a sausage egg McMuffin at McDonald's and a couple hash browns, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a great step in the right direction. Is just oatmeal by itself going to be the best option long term for your blood sugar and nutrients and a whole slew of other things just by itself? Probably not. But like if we recognize it as like a step on this path and it's helping you get good habits in place, cool, let's get those in place. And then we talk about, oh, maybe have some protein with that, and maybe some veggies and other things like that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to say from what we were saying earlier is like, not to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but like, and this isn't always the case, but think about who stands to gain money, right? Like there's a lot of money. There are incredibly ridiculous margins on supplements. Like that's part of why these supplement companies push them. And like, Brandon and I don't make any money by saying go eat beef and broccoli. We don't make any money by saying there isn't, a CFSB supplement line. In fact, we could just be like, hey, we're coming out with a CFSB supplement line, white label it from some other company, be making a ton more, that way. So like, real whole food, except for that one TikTok I think you sent me that was like the potato.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. I was like, I saw an ad and I thought it was a joke for potatoes, like a beautiful ad, like potatoes for sport. She was like running, wiping sweat off of her forehead. Then she reached down to grab some potatoes. And I was like, this is a joke. And it wasn't. It was sponsored by, I don't know, Potato Farmers of America. And then there was hope that I could get. I don't care. Broccoli, if you're out there listening, I'll get sponsored by broccoli. I'll get sponsored. I got to find somebody I want to get sponsored by. Carrots, broccoli. I'll figure out something. I love carrots. Hit me up, carrots, if you're out there listening. Slide into my DMs.
Yeah, slide into my DMs, carrots.
Yeah, watch the money. Watch the money. Yeah.
I mean, and that's and luckily that's a good thing, right? Like according to our like current patent laws, like because believe it or some company would do it in some fashion. Like you can't make proprietary broccoli. The only reason they can make proprietary corn is because it's genetically modified. And so like you can make proprietary supplements and then make a bunch of money off of it. Whereas with real whole food, it doesn't quite have the marketing team. So just, that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind whenever you think about purchasing a new supplement or someone's really hawking something at you. Think about like, where's that coming from?
Yeah. Okay. Let's say, Robbie, I've been listening to this podcast and I want to learn more. I want to improve nutrition. I like your bassy tones of your voice, and I just love to work with you. How would one person go about working with you? That's part A. Part B, tell me, I guess, what kind of problems do you solve? Why do people go to you?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of how to get in touch, so you can go to CrossFitSouthBend.com and we've got the best steps to kind of get in touch with us, you can always feel free to email me at Robbie, ROBBY, at CrossFitSouthBend.com, and we can set up a meeting to discuss your particular goals. And I would say, yeah, in relation to what we do here and what we talked about today, there are really two main programs that I offer that will help with both of the things that we talked about today. So if you're just like, hey, I want to make sure I'm getting all the vitamins and minerals and omega-3s and micronutrients I need to just be healthy for the rest of my life, nutrition coaching. Because you need to be eating real whole food and have good food habits and get to a point where you can sustain those habits for the next 40, 50, 60, however many years of your life. That's going to be the single important thing, more important than any other supplement you could possibly buy or take, to make sure that you have optimal nutrient status for health and longevity. If you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole, either for, health reasons, because you've got, deeper health issues that need work, or because you want to maximize your performance, or because you're just curious, like, where am I genuinely deficient? Or, is my cortisol low? Or are my B vitamins actually low? We do a program called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, where we use lab tests to get a sense of where are your nutrients. You can be eating the best diet in the world, but if you're not absorbing the nutrients in the small intestine due to, a gut dysfunction, that's where you can become deficient. So we use lab tests to see, hey, is there some problem with absorption or stomach acid production? Or are you eating all the right foods, but hey, you're not getting enough vitamin A or something like that. So option one would be, hey, let's just get the basic health, nutrition, lifestyle in line. And then option two, for those who really want to dig down deep, would be functional health testing to figure out, like, am I genuinely deficient in these things at the cellular level or not?
Yeah. And where Lucky Charms fits into any of that, right? Into your life. Like, how do you find balance?
Have someone 30 days of Lucky Charms, and then we'll do a micronutrient test, and they'll be sufficient. Everything will be green.
Everything's just beautiful. Gosh, what a world. I think my son came to me the other day and said that, like, Dad, I wish pizza was the healthy thing. Why is it like this? I don't think it was really a question. It was just like an exclamation of, like, why is this stuff not healthy? Yeah.
The existential question that all humans have been asking for in one way or another. Like, why are the hard things the helpful things, and why are the easy things the not so helpful things?
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll never know. I wish I had a bowl of Lucky Charms right here. I didn't plan appropriately. I could be just like eating it through a bowl. Well, thank you, Robbie. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, everyone, if you made it this far into the podcast, and we'll catch you all later.
All right. Bye.